doing advanced care planning. I think I know most of you, but I'm Pastor Tim Rainerson from South Dakota. I am on a statewide task force to try to increase the number of people who do advanced care plans. And the reason why we're involved with it is if you do this, you get better health care. I mean, that's the bottom line, is you get the health care that you really think you need, and we don't do extra things that we don't think we need. So it's on both the health system sides and on the people sides, it's better for both groups. The only reason I'm on this task force is I have a member who was the dean of a nursing school, and this nursing school was trying to put this together and promote it and all that kind of stuff. South Dakota, we have 2 major health systems. Of course, they don't get along. Does that happen around here? You know, and these are huge health systems. Where I live is a little town, about 25,000, and they have their own health system. Has about 25-bed hospital, has a clinic. It's just a small little group. But the idea is, how can we improve health care down the road? And one of the ways to do that is by having conversations. So tonight is about how do we as a church, how do we as individuals help express what we want and talk about things in terms of the future. Now, most of you know, right, we've been having class all week. There's students there. I've been really thankful. These guys and others have, Marty, have been sitting in on class all week and joining us, and it's been really good. And we're thankful for it, Steve and others. So let's start tonight with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we're thankful for your plan, that years ago, before we were even created, you decided that we would be yours. That while we were yet sinners, you sent your Son and who died for us. Help us to think about what the future holds, and mostly that you hold the future. Give us wisdom and understanding. Give us of your Spirit again. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. I gotta watch this, right? If I turn down. Now I'm getting used to it. So I got glasses and hearing aids, and then on Sunday I wear this thing, and Garth Brooks or whoever I am. All right, we're going to begin with a case. So did you get sheets from Carrie? Pastor Malinak. There you go. We'll start with a story. Jan is a 68-year-old, heavy-smoking, diabetic widow. And she had an event 2 days following surgery to remove a cancerous portion of her lung. She has not regained consciousness since surgery. She's on a ventilator, feeding tubes, and IVs. All right, we understand what's happening so far? Jan has 4 sons in their 40s. They live across the country who were not there for surgery, not a single one of them, because it was according to Jan's understanding of the surgeon that the surgery was supposed to be pretty straightforward. Kind of no big deal. They expected her to go home after 10 days to 2 weeks. After a week, her sons arrive at the hospital. The question is, how do you help them deal with what has happened? And what should be done now? Do you have questions about the case? Now, this is a real life case. Jan was a member of our congregation.
Any paperwork at home? Well, she can't answer you. I'd be digging through her desk drawer to see if there's any kind of paperwork that she had that they didn't know about, because sometimes we don't share that information.
Yeah, no, she didn't have any other paperwork. She had designated the eldest son, I think he's the eldest son to be her health care power of attorney. The youngest, not the youngest son, maybe the 3rd son lived with her, but he had gone off to the war and never quite came back, if you know what I mean, right? And so he's living with her, but he's not able to make any decisions whatsoever. He needs to be taken care of. In fact, he's now gone to live by his brother, who is a high school teacher out in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Casper, Wyoming.
Out of the picture?
One of her 4 sons is not making decisions.
Okay, so that would be 3 left.
But they all came together. They're including their brother who has some challenge
Sure.
even when the decision's made. And the oldest one is the one who will finally have to make the decision.
The oldest one. Okay, so the level of knowledge about the case, since they weren't there for the surgery, would be really important. Do we know that level of knowledge?
Oh yeah, I can't point it this direction.
You have to point it to your mouth.
Oh, whoa.
Can you repeat the question so everyone?
Sure, so what's his level of knowledge about his mother's case, since
Okay.
he was not there for the surgery?
So the mother's knowledge of the surgery, and I talked to her ahead of time, the mother's knowledge of the surgery was pretty straightforward, not that big a deal, we're taking care of it. I had that same look on my face that you have, because this is removal of part of a lung, and on top of it, it wasn't done at the regular hospital, it was done at the specialty heart hospital. But, okay, this is what she understood, this is what she knew. Somebody took, well, actually one of our members of our church took her down for the surgery. It's about 30 miles away. He stayed there for a little bit, then he left after the surgery's done, make sure he's okay. She's there, and then has 2 days later an event. And that's literally what the physician called it, an event. Do we get more information about the event? It seems to be some sort of something like a stroke, something. I went down the first afternoon after surgery just to see her. It's 50 miles away from me. So I went down that afternoon to see what's happening. You know, there's nobody around to talk to. You know, I just sat in her room and prayed. She can't respond at this point. Visit with the nurses for a minute, and I went home. I went down the next day, same thing, just go say hi, see what's going on. I get to the third day, and the nurses say there's an event. Now, can the nurses talk to me?
They can with a signed consent, I think, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, okay, there's no consigned consent by anybody.
Okay.
So can the nurses talk to me?
No,
No. Can the physician talk to me?
no,
But I'm the only guy showing up,
too bad.
because the other four are ways out, and they don't think that they've been told it's not that big a deal, that she's going to handle it. So did the nurses talk to me? Absolutely, they talked to me. And did the physician talk to me? Yes, we blew apart that whole HIPAA thing, and we just started having conversations.
The patient before she had the operation? It seems to me, if he said, oh, no big deal, don't worry about it, somebody was misled.
Okay, excellent point. So was she misled by the doctor, or did she just flat out not understand? We don't know the answer to that. Actually, I do have an answer for it in a little bit, but it seems like she just didn't understand what was going on. Or there's another option yet. She's going to do the surgery because she thinks she's going to do the surgery, and even though she's been told the risk, she's going to go forward with it. And so she's not telling her sons everything that's going on. So, you know, that's how confusing this is. Because she's the only person that was in with the doctor, there's not a second person to ask what was really said. Yeah, Nicole.
I'm wondering if you say, oh, I'm going to be in the hospital for a while, but it sounds reasonable that they would come back, but maybe not, because if they have small kids and things, then she may not want to impose on them, so she just tells them it's fine.
That's entirely possible. I mean, I don't know the details of this. She has a son who's got kids that are like middle school. She's got a son in Colorado that had younger kids, and then she had a son in Texas that played in a band. And then she's got this son who went off to war and didn't quite come back. Had real alcohol and drug trouble. Yeah, he's a great guy, but he's just not going to be helping make these decisions. This was... I think it was 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. So we're talking at least more. Iraq,
Yeah, exactly.
not Vietnam or something.
No. The one that, how old? Her oldest son is probably now about 43, 44, something like that. Yeah, because she's 67, right? Her oldest son is about 43, 44. She kind of got started early in life, but there's no husband. She was divorced the first time, and the husband she married the second time has now died.
I don't want to take up too much time, but just trying to gather a few facts.
Yeah.
So the power of attorney, you mentioned that, if I'm not mistaken. That was the oldest son, correct?
Right.
Should have been there prior to the surgery. There's a reason for a power of attorney.
But he wasn't. So
So now the hospital made a mistake. The surgeon made a mistake.
well, I don't know.
That would be the same as a duress type situation, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
You
I mean,
can't
you don't
make
have to have your
decisions.
power of attorney there. You're going in for...
There's no
There
requirement.
isn't?
No, so I fell off a bicycle one day. It wasn't going very fast. I did the Superman thing, went right over the top of the bars, and busted that elbow. I
Yeah,
mean, that's it.
I'd have to read the power of attorney.
And
but
so, who's
based on
got
what you're
power of
saying,
attorney for me?
yeah.
My wife was 450 miles away. She says, should I come? I said, no, I'm good. And I got through the surgery, and I'm fine. And they called her on the phone. The four boys kept calling in, and then the nurse got nasty because who's what and all this kind of... Yeah.
Find you.
If the oldest son had the power, the medical power of attorney, would he not have known what her wishes would have been if something like that happened?
Well, her wishes were never to have this thing happen.
Well, I understand that, but none of us have control over that.
Right.
So if she gave him medical power of attorney, wouldn't there be some kind of a discussion?
No, not necessarily at all. You know, that just because you have appointed someone to be that person doesn't mean you had a conversation with them at all. All right. And you keep trying to figure out what she wanted.
If we haven't shared what we want done, the power of attorney is like any other piece of paper that I could hand you our budget. It doesn't mean anything else because you don't know what their feelings are, what they want done.
Well, okay, but we do know some things. She's a firm believer. She and I had had communion before she went in. We talked about heaven. So there's nothing there. She also is a long-term member of Lutherans for Life, which many of you know of that group around here. So she's pro-life Lutheran, active member of the church. Her sons are not nearly as active as they once were, but you know, this is not somebody out there on the fringe of things. This is somebody who was in church every time we had church.
Did she mention it?
Well, she wasn't afraid of dying. You guys are keep trying to figure out what she wanted, right? Is that the right question? Is that the right question? What does she want? Now, Wendy, you had your hand.
Thinking, we can talk all day about what everybody should have done, but we can't go back and change that. The question is what do we do now?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And we can find out all the details we can, which we don't know a lot, but what are we going to do now?
Is it a group or is it an individual that stands before Christ?
Is it a group or an individual that stands before Christ? We all stand before Christ.
Only one at a time.
Well, we're all standing before Christ all the time, every day, every hour. Oh, you mean when we get to heaven?
That's correct.
And then Jesus says, you're mine, and then we don't have to stand before him at all.
Or he doesn't.
But you
What
won't
I'm
know
saying
that.
is, we need to know what she thinks. We need to know what she wants.
But you
Well,
can't.
she wants, like the rest of us, to be in heaven someday. Not that day, but someday to be in heaven.
Well, then you can't, then that's her wish. She's already given it to you.
Right, but what does that do with how do we now go forward? All right, so here's the real challenge. Okay, she's on a ventilator, she is on IVs, and she's on a feeding tube. We got all this, right? The doctor at some point, the boys all come together. I don't know the sons. I know the mom, but the sons have moved away, and I'm the pastor. It's been there a long time, but they moved away before I got there. So I've never really met them. So a guy from the church comes down with me. He happened to be, he's kind of our head elder kind of guy. He also was their biology teacher. So he knew these kids growing up. He's known them all their life. So they have a meeting. The two of us go. The 4 boys are there. There are 2 doctors, a couple of nurses, a social worker. They're all in this room together. It could have been Joe's friends, but it wasn't. And so the doctor, the palliative care doctor, who actually was a thoracic, is that right? Thoracic surgeon? I got the right term? But she was now a palliative doctor. She's not doing thoracic surgery anymore. She's doing this. Sits down with us and visits and says, here's the deal. She's not going to get any better. We're not sure exactly what all had happened. It's not necessarily anybody's fault or mistake, but something happened here and she's not going to get any better. What are we going to do? So she then starts talking about options. She is in a very high-level hospital, and she doesn't need to be there anymore because there's not much they can do for her. So we're going to have to transfer her somewhere. Where are we going to transfer her? What are we going to do? Feeding tube, what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do about the ventilator? Should we start turning it down? Should we start moving someplace else? How do you make these decisions is the question. Now, I mean, do you want the rest of the story right away?
No.
No. Right, I mean, and she laid them all out, and she was an amazing physician. She just laid them all out. It was a great discussion. Everybody kind of knew what was happening. Yeah, Steve.
If I'm any one of the 4 sons, no matter what my relationship is with her, I would want to find out what her level of pain or comfort is and find out what we can do to maximize that before you consider the next move.
All right,
She's not dead yet.
No, she's not dead, and she doesn't seem to have much pain. She seems to be fairly just laying there, not much response, not much going on. She's just laying there. Do you all get the basic idea what we're talking about? So, I mean, the details here are not really the last important thing. This has happened, Wendy said. Okay, now what is the next step? Now, we had a discussion about what to do. So let's just take feeding tube. Feeding tube, should we turn it off or on? Or should we continue to feed her that way? Now, she's a member of Lutherans for Life. Lutherans for Life has historically said you cannot take away nutrition from anyone because that would be like taking it away from me. I'm going to make it for quite a while before this is a problem. Some of you won't make it as long, like Pastor Carey, but I'm going to make it a while, but sooner or later we're all going to have trouble. So can we shut off the feeding tube? The doctor said, well, here's the deal. Let's not take it out. Let's leave it in and see where we're at, and after a couple days, we're not going to put anything through it right now, but let's see if she gets better. She'll be okay for a couple days. If that's all right with all of you, we'll just kind of take this, not get rid of it or not keep it. We'll just wait and just see what happens. Okay, there's that one. Ventilator, what are we going to do about that? This is, of course, pushing air in. Doc says we can start weaning her off of it. Let's just try that. We'll turn it down a little, we'll turn it down a little more, turn it down. Actually, turn it all the way off and she could breathe. It's fine. She started breathing air. So that part worked. IVs, does she need the hydration? Well, once you move to feeding tube, it isn't so important to have the IVs. So, maybe we'll leave the port in, but we'll disconnect that. And we're going to move her to a different facility, which is called hospice. And in this case, it's the other side of town, but, they'll take her over there. And the hospice facility has rooms as big as that over there. And there's one room where she's laying, and there's a room behind it where the boys can take turns sleeping and just be with her. And she loved, go ahead, say it, Steve. Elvis. And so I go down there, and the room would be cranked up to full volume, and she's not responding at all, but we're playing Elvis at the top of my level of compassion. I come in, they turn it down because I'm there, but that's okay. So that's what happens. And she then dies about 2 weeks later. You get the story? I mean, this is not uncommon story at all. The only thing in here that's a little weird is that they didn't come, but they didn't know to come. And whether it's because she didn't tell them the truth, or she didn't know the truth, or the doctor didn't tell her the truth, we find out later that her case was taken to the thoracic surgeon group because the whole group didn't know whether they should do the surgery or not. And they had to have a debate among all of them, and it was presented to say, this lady's pretty sick, should we do this surgery or shouldn't we? But I don't know that she knew that. I mean, I have no idea. Certainly no one else knew that outside of the group. The only reason we knew it is because that palliative care doc had been in on the meeting and then told us about it later. The point for this, oh, go ahead.
I'm a little bit flabbergasted. This is a well-known hospital, professional hospital, no advance directives, no DNR, nothing. Is that what you're saying? She had...
No, she has an advance directive. Her advance directive is, my son is the one. That's an advance directive. And the son, the oldest son, was going to make sure that he and his brothers were in agreement before they did anything, which makes sense too.
No DNR?
No, no DNR, of course. Because they didn't think it was that bad. And actually, she couldn't have had this surgery if she had had a DNR. Hardly. I mean, they're putting her on a ventilator to go through the surgery. Am I getting it correct? Yeah. I mean, if she had a DNR and they're in that position, she's only 67. You know, she's only 67. She seems to be fairly healthy. I mean, she's got her trouble. She keeps smoking, and she's a diabetic. She's a little big. But, you know, from her point of view, she wasn't that bad. And I'm the pastor. I'm not going to argue. I'm just going to try to be with her and just kind of hang out. The point of this whole story is things can go bad quickly. And how do we as a church, as people of God, help those when things have gone bad quickly? Now, should all 4 boys have been there? I think if they had a clue that this was going on, they'd have been there. They love their mother. There's nothing wrong here. It's a fine family. But they just didn't have any idea. Okay, so in the meantime, what happens? Somebody's got to be there. I keep going. The doctor is a little hesitant to talk to me. Nurses are more happy to talk to me. That's just the way life is, normally speaking. You know. And we got to get something done while we wait for the boys to show up. And then I kept going back. It's only 100 miles round trip. It's no big deal. Out our way, I drive all the time. Go down, spend 3 hours, come back. What is the church's role? So that's the second part. Why should churches be involved in advanced care planning? Number one, healthcare is our deal. Always has been. We did a Bible study with the students where we read the Gospel of Mark in, 20 minutes? And looked at every last passage in Mark in 20 minutes that had to do with healing. And there are just tons of them. Our Lord was out healing people all the time. This is a big issue. Isaiah 53. You all know the verse? By his wounds, stripes, whatever translation you're using, by his stripes we are healed. This is a big deal. Every hospital that exists, pretty well, was started by Christians. Somewhere along the line, we've walked out and not been so involved. The Christian church. Now, I mean, the Christians are heavily involved in this system, but the church itself hasn't been. Secondly, life has gotten much more dramatic in the hospital. We got computerized, which means we aren't telling stories to each other. The physician comes on in the morning and expects in the past that the nurse would tell him all that happened last night. I mean, she'd write in the chart, or he'd write in the chart, whatever, but they'd also have a conversation. It don't happen so much anymore. It's all now typed in, and they draw down a schedule, and we got to fit this category, and we just go forward, and right, Doc? And it's, you know, the information's in that system somewhere, but it's hard to write in red pen on a computer. It's just tough. So we got a more complex system. We have more things going on today than we ever had before. The hospital, everybody else, actually Medicare, Medicaid, insurances, all these people want you to have something as you walk in. So what is your advance directives? Now maybe she had thought about it in advance, but she at least lined somebody up. An advance directive, would it ever taken care of this issue? You have an event after surgery, what do you want done? I mean, that's too weird. I mean, just don't do things like that. But above all, we have the message to talk about. When we're talking about life and death, that's our business, right? Medicine only goes so far. We don't stop. We keep going. You know, medicine gets to a point, and somebody's not there anymore, your grief group, but we're still here. And the church is still here, and we're still trying to help one another out, even past all of that. When is our work with a patient done? It's a silly question, right? I mean, just flat out silly. We're never quite done. Until that person gets to be in heaven, just like the person before them. The thing about advanced care planning, and I put this here, is it's a gift. If you get your estate put together in advance, before something happens, that's a good thing. And your children don't have to deal with it so bad. So in my particular case, my mother died 21 years ago, colon cancer. Mom took care of all the books, Dad didn't. It's not that Dad couldn't, but he didn't. Mom took care of it all. She didn't do real well. When she died, and Dad had no idea, my brothers and I, Dad, had no idea where all the bank accounts were. Not even which bank they were in. Because they had moved from Michigan to St. Louis, and they had CDs, certificate of deposits, and they thought they had some in banks, but where is that record that says this is the number and where it is? And there is no list. Do you have a list of all of your accounts someplace? I'm getting about a third of you to say yes, and the rest of us say, all I got is debt, what difference does it make? I don't know, Blue, do you got a list of all the? Yeah. Oh, your wife does. Yeah. Well, there you go. Amen, brother.
I wouldn't have the passwords, the account numbers. I wouldn't even know what all the banks are.
So after this happened in our family, my dad, once a year, at the end of the year, sends to the three of us, I have two brothers, sends the list of the accounts. He doesn't say what's in them, just here's the accounts, here's the numbers. Nothing about passwords, of course, but here's the basic thing, just so we have a basic idea. My mom was a hoarder. Not bad, but she had medicine that she'd moved with twice. And this is, Mom dies in 97. She had medicine that Dad had to throw out that was from 67. You know, because, why throw it out? You might need it someday or something, I don't know. And so it's a gift to have that kind of set up. The people that go to the funeral home and make the plan and get it done, it's just a lot easier on everybody. But what about this? Have we made plans on this issue? That's the question. Have we made it easier? If you do it, you actually get better care. You get the care that you want instead of the care that is coming after you. Or, and we all know the struggles of these days. Physicians running more tests than perhaps we think they need. But I try to put the best construction on everybody. Because I was taught that, you were all taught that, right? What did your mom say? If you can't say something good about somebody, I think she said shut up. But it's the same basic premise, right? You just can't do this. So the doctors are trying to figure out what's going on, but maybe that doesn't need to happen. And maybe the treatment won't be any different anyway. And all these kind of things have to be happening. But finally, if you help figure this out in advance a little bit, you can lessen the guilt on the 4 boys. Because they're going to have guilt no matter what. Do we have guilt every day? We're not Catholic. We don't do it really well, but we still have guilt. Can I say that and get away with it? I mean, you ask them, they're really good at guilt. We have days of obligation we have to go to church, right? Remember some of this stuff? Carrie's going, yeah. Adam, you were, yeah, part of that same crowd? Yeah. So we're Lutherans. We don't do guilt as well as they do, but we still got some of it. What is advanced care? So I put it on here. There's a little chart thing. Advanced care is different depending on who you are and your age group and your health. So if you take Adam and Pastor Carrie, or just Carrie, they are about, I don't know, you guys about the same age? I would think so.
Yeah, close.
Close. They're both about 28. Is that correct?
Several times over.
Yes, that's correct, more than once.
Less several times. Probably by.
What does advanced care planning look like for them? They just need to pick somebody, right? I mean, they don't have chronic things of diabetes and heart failure and all this stuff that's going on. They're not worried about strokes and anything like that. They're just, in case something were to happen to me really bad, I need somebody to look out for me. Now, who by definition will look out for them in the first place? Their spouse, yeah. You don't, I mean, you can put it on the document, your spouse, but I mean, that's pretty straightforward. In both of their cases, though, they have younger kids. You don't have a kid that's old of age yet, do you? Neither one of them do. All right, so who would it go to next? Whoever they say. They got to appoint somebody. Because it may go to their parents, or they could appoint a sister or brother, or they could appoint somebody. That age group, all they really need to do in terms of advanced care, that's this first level here, is just pick somebody. But at some point there's a hiccup. You see the hiccup on the chart? Heart attack, I don't know, something happened along the way, and now the line's going down. And after a heart attack, do you get back to the same level of functioning as before? Maybe, but not after the second one. And it keeps going down. As you get more and more ill like this, then there are more and more questions. Jan thought she was up here. She probably was in here in the middle somewhere, and by the time this is over with, she's down here. But if I'm 91 years old in a nursing home, now the question about DNR becomes important. Because we looked at it today. Do you know what the percentage of people is that are in a nursing home that get better after CPR? 3%. That's 1, 2, 3. 3%. What happens in a nursing home when they do CPR? They end up breaking the ribs. And these people are not able to get it quick enough, and to get restored to health fully at that rate is not going to be good. On the other hand, those of you who are walking around, which all of you walked in this evening, it's a different deal. If you have CPR done in a hospital or you're right there, chance of recovery is pretty good. It's not 100%, but it's pretty good. It's certainly not as good as they say on TV. Because on TV, they always do it, and they're always good, and everybody's fine, but we all know TV is not real, correct? Except, of course, diners, drive-ins, and dives. That's real, but the rest of it is not. So why do advanced care planning? First is to motivate individuals to think in advance. Second on the bottom is to select a qualified healthcare agent. Third is to give some basic goals of care to that agent in case of, here it says, severe permanent brain injury problems. So when I went doing Superman off my bicycle, I could have landed and caused all kinds of trouble. All I did was break out some teeth, make it look like it was from Arkansas, I've told you this already, busted my arm, but I was okay. Was I wearing a helmet that day? Actually, it wouldn't have mattered because where I hit had nothing to do with where a helmet would be. I almost always wear a helmet when I'm bicycling, but I'd gotten about 50 miles from home when I was going 350 and I'd forgot it. And I was going about 5 miles an hour. Because if you're 50 years old plus and you weigh more than 50 pounds and you land on things, it's a whole lot different than when you were 5 years old and weighed 50 pounds and you bounced. I don't bounce so well anymore. All right, so you may have a conversation, so Carrie and Adam, whoever they pick as the second person, or even with their spouse, say, in case of a permanent brain injury, in case of something like this, this is what I'm about. And that may be as simple as, just remember, my home is not here. My home is in heaven. I mean, it doesn't have to be any fancier than that, right? I mean, just simply as simple as, don't say to the doctor, do everything you can to save their life right now. Do as much as is possible, but you know, at some point, there may be enough is enough. That's their age group. Okay. Who's in my age group? I know you're a little older than I am. Yeah, Steve and I aren't too far apart, and Lou. What should be done in our age? So Lou just got welcome to Medicare. Steve got welcome to Medicare. I got 5 years before I hit welcome to Medicare. What in our age group should be done in terms of advanced care planning? I'm not sure that it's any different than theirs. We're basically healthy. Things are going pretty good. You got to pick somebody. Now, in Lou's case, you have 3 children. So your healthcare agent is probably your wife first, and then probably your son Ben, because of his 2 sisters are a little iffy. No. It's because Ben lives with him, works by him, they're in business together, they're farming together. He's the closest, right? And he's very sharp. And he's not out to get you. No. Your case, oh, the young lady next to you? So how can you be 65 and she's 35? That's not right. It's called grace of God stuff, huh? Yeah. You know how I got through life? You can just see it right now. 35, yes. Yeah. Is that correct, 35? Pretty close. Yeah, not so much. 39? 29. Oh, 29, I'm sorry. So what do you need to tell her? What do I need to tell her? Yeah.
Basically the same thing as these guys are doing, just be ready. And designate her, and then beyond that, which would be
Who's the second person after that?
the two twin daughters.
All right, so they're twins.
One of them comes before the other because of who she is and how she is.
All right. I was going to say twins, they got one mind, so they can just do it together. No. I know it is. Okay, so that's age group, right? Planning isn't a whole lot different. And you notice that Jan McMahon would have fallen basically in this age group. All right, I'm not going to pick on anybody for age from here on out, because it was okay, fine, but I'm not going to do it out of that. Say you are 95 and in a nursing home. What would you tell them at that point? The list might be very different, correct? I don't want this done. Please don't have them call the ambulance. Please don't crush me this way. I mean, that may be a whole different deal. Or then the DNR comes in. Or if I can't swallow anymore, please don't put a feeding tube in. I don't want to have artificial hydration. I mean, those are the kind of things you would talk about at that point, right? But what's the most important thing? Who you pick, and did you have a conversation? Now, for the record, just because you had a conversation doesn't mean that everything's hunky-dory and life is simple. We're going to look at it in class tomorrow, but they really have done a lot of research on how well can a child or a spouse guess the intentions of the other person. And guess how many times they're right? Somewhere between 60 and 70% is where they're kind of right. The problem is, I mean, one, do I know what I want?
Maybe.
I mean, so I tell my daughter Sarah, who's after Ruth, my wife, then comes Sarah, this is what I want, but do I really know what I want?
No.
I want a warm place to sleep. I want donuts in the morning. It was great. They brought donuts this morning. And, you know, I want to be basically okay. And for my wife to call me every day if she's not here and I'm not there. You know, some basic things. But how do I know what I want down the road? And if I end up in a situation that I'm not now, so I'm paralyzed for some reason, how would I know what I want in that case? All I want to know for sure is that Jesus loves me. But beyond that, and my wife still loves me, beyond that, you know, it's hard to say. So it's hard for the substitute to guess what I want because I don't know what I want. Actually, I have a mug at home, and it has 8 sides to it. And it says on there, my decision is maybe. Because I never really know. Where are we going to go eat tonight? I don't, whatever. Eating is important. I don't, whatever, you know? Have a conversation. Pick someone and have a conversation. On the top of the backside, there is this place called Gunderson Lutheran Health, which is in La Crosse, Wisconsin. You can look it up on this new thing called the internet if you want, or whatever you want to do. But they have a 96% rate of people who fill this out. Forms out. Most of the people are in the healthy age groups, and it's just pretty clean. But they actually have people then help them when you're no longer as healthy, and you're moving into chronic kind of things and talking it through. And what's happened is people don't get treatments they don't want, and it saves everybody money on top of it. So Tom Brokaw did a report, remember Tom Brokaw, NBC News? Did a report on this thing a few years back. It was on national TV and said, here's a place where it's actually working. People aren't getting extra things they don't want. They're getting what they need, and the physicians actually have time to get to the things they need. They aren't getting stuck on things that don't matter. Let's do a little terminology. An advanced care plan could be anything that just talks about what's going forward. Now, you can have a variety of advanced care plans. They then would include a directive. A directive could be a living will. And what's a living will? A living will basically anymore has 2 things on it. The DNR, the do not resuscitate, and the artificial hydration and nutrition. You can then add other things if you want on there, but those are the 2 key issues that tend to be added. You're looking at me with quizzing. Yeah, no, we're good yet. Okay. We got it? I mean, those are the 2 biggest issues people want to know about. And you could write some other things on there. A durable power of attorney for healthcare issues or a healthcare agent is this person that you pick, and you better tell them. Because it doesn't make any sense to pick somebody and not tell them. So you guys have 2 kids, and neither of them are here. No, your daughter's here. Neither one of them are here. So these are the tough questions. I mean, my dad, who's in the hospital today, has my little brother, my youngest brother, is the healthcare person because he's the caregiver. He lives about 70 miles away, and he checks on regularly. I live 1,000 miles away. My other brother lives 1,000 miles away. We'll get there as soon as, if we get called, we're going right away, but we're not there. So Peter should have that responsibility and that right. And it's very clear. In my case, it is my wife, of course, and then my daughter. My son's younger. We don't want to get him involved in anything. But that's a whole different issue.
Pull the plug. I'm just getting a tooth taken out.
Yeah, pull the plug. I'm just having my teeth taken out. No. Michael probably isn't up to this. I mean, he just has challenges. Nothing against him, but this probably would never be anything he should do. In fact, his sister already knows that when we're gone, she will have to look out for him. Nothing wrong. He's a great kid. He's got a full-time job. He has so much money in the bank. It's amazing because he don't know how to spend it. But it's just all there. But he probably will never be the one that the doctor would ever want to go talk to. He's not incompetent, but does that all making sense? He isn't just quite the guy that you should be visiting with. My daughter's probably the best. I don't know, have you ever heard, is this one allowed in Texas? Allow natural death?
I don't know all the details of it because I don't do that on a daily basis, but if you get a DNR now, it's two different ways. DNR COT, which I think we're the only state with this, continue other care, and then you have DNR AND, allow natural death.
Okay, did you all understand that? So here in Texas, she's saying there are two kinds of DNRs, and I know other states are having two kinds. But the initials might be different. DNR, don't resuscitate, but continue other treatment.
Well, you could.
Yeah, I'm on here, I think. And then, and then there's a DNR that says allow natural death.
And I think we've got new regulations around making sure that the informed consent before the DNR is signed has been really done well. A couple people have to sign.
Well, and there has to be a thorough explanation of what this all is, what you're talking about, and all those kind of things. Do you have to have a DNR slip signed? If you have a healthcare agent, you don't have to have a DNR, right? Your healthcare agent is the one that will be involved. We don't have to have DNRs. You have to have somebody appointed to take care of you. And actually, I'm sure in Texas,
So yeah, you're not, I mean,
it'll say who will take care of you if you don't know.
there's such a thing as called an out-of-hospital DNR. If you come in with nothing, you're not a DNR.
Right.
You're automatically full code.
Exactly.
But there's something called an out-of-hospital DNR that people have sometimes when they're in nursing homes, and I know our palliative care people are always complaining that the nursing home forgot to bring the out-of-hospital DNR, and so.
And we're now dealing with forms and paperwork. So you sign in at one healthcare system, and their computers aren't matching with the other healthcare system. And, I'm in Texas right now. None of this is my healthcare system, which is up north, even though my insurance goes everywhere. But how does this all work? That's why having a person is the most important thing.
I know when my husband was in hospice at our home, we had to post on the wall a DNR. So if Robin came to visit me and goes, he isn't breathing, that she didn't call the paramedics to come and do something. So we had to.
South Dakota, we wouldn't have to do that, but yeah, every state's different on all this stuff. Which our Canadian friends are having trouble understanding that every state in this union is different. We all have 50 different laws, because they have just one law and it comes directly from the Queen. Yes, I thought I'd wake Wendell up again and we'd keep him moving. So, if you go down the list, we all know what CPR is, right? Chest compressions, breathing in the mouth. DNR, we've talked about that. Artificial nutrition and hydration, you all know what that is? That is some sort of artificial way to get stuff into you. At what point in life is that no longer necessary? When your body is shutting down and it isn't working right anymore. So if your kidneys aren't working right and your bladder is not working right, to get the fluid off of you, you have congestive heart failure and it's not pumping right, at some point putting extra fluids in is not a good idea, or extra nutrition. Palliative care is a big title. Any of us could use palliative care right now. I mean, it is just caring for people who have chronic stuff and taking care of pain management. Hospice is a little tiny part of that. Hospice, though, we've now changed the goal of treatment. The goal of treatment is no longer cure, but it's care. Actually, palliative care tends not to be the cure people, they tend to be the care people. But you could have a palliative care doc where you're still going through surgery for something or whatever, because they're dealing with your chronic pain while the other doc's trying to fix whatever it is that's wrong inside or whatever it might be. I got that right. Oh, she's going to ask.
No, I just want to put a plug for the palliative care because, Well, we have a palliative care full-time doctor now, and it's really good. And she sees lots of people who are, they don't have to be on hospice to be seen by her. And, I've seen her do amazing things. Like, she's the one who does all the talking and the connecting everybody. So it's so good for that. And I've seen her do things like, we had a patient in his 20s dying from HIV-related things. Mom didn't know that he had HIV, and he's dying. And so she was able to kind of arrange for getting Mom there. And that's the kind of stuff, that I've seen them do. It's more than just let's fill out the forms, Sure. So, I mean, if Jan had palliative care, usually palliative care doesn't come in pre-surgery unless it's something that you're really expected not to wake up from, but they're really good. And they do, like you said, a lot of stuff beyond. And they know all about, like, the stages of dying and what pain relief to do, and, it's really can be a very good thing.
So palliative care, if you're in a place where they have it, which you guys say you do, where I'm at in a little town, we don't have a palliative care doc. We just have doctors who just do what they've always done. And in some ways, palliative care is what doctors used to always do. It's just, they're caring for their patients, making sure they're okay and comfortable. But in a bigger place, palliative care actually tends to be a team. So there's a social worker, a nurse, chaplain, variety of people pulled together to get all the resources they can to help. Are we good so far? I put on here, so I use this form with folks back home. I put on here a website that has to do with our hospital system. But you can go to anybody's hospital system and they have all the forms. And actually, I've never used one of their forms. When we went and redid our will for our family, because my daughter was 26 and she wasn't in there yet, we figured it's about time that we put her in the will. All our will said, if in case someday we have kids, we figured by now. Actually, my wife was on my daughter's case because she has kids and she needs a will. And then Ruth looked at ours and said, whoops. So while we were there, it didn't cost anything extra, I don't think. We filled out the piece of paper that listed healthcare proxy. It was just one more piece of paper in all those pieces of paper. Back to the church side. Why is this important? Do you know the hymn, I'm but a stranger here, heaven is my home? This isn't really where we're going to live forever, deep in the heart of Texas, or wherever it may be we're living. Even if you get to paradise, which they call South Dakota, you're not going to be there forever. The great thing is in South Dakota, we don't have the problems you have. Life is simpler. I have a brother-in-law that calls it Mayberry. Because it's just kind of quiet, and it's kind of that deal, and all that kind of stuff. We've heard of meth, but it's not. Meth is a big problem in South Dakota, but it's not where we're at. It's out on the reservations, and there it's a huge problem. So, this isn't our home long term. Where is our home? Heaven. We do not believe in death with dignity. Death with dignity is a slogan put out by those who are trying to say that death is okay. Is death okay? No. We were created to live. Why did death come into this world? Because some guy by the name of Adam, maybe not that one, but some guy by the name of Adam stood there quietly, right? Where was he when that was all going on? Right next to her, right? Adam wasn't out for a walk that day. He was right next to her. He's supposed to be the one saying, that's an interesting idea. His wife's having a conversation with Satan. That's always a good idea, too. And then they take this fruit and what did Satan say? Did God really say? What was the answer? No, the answer is, I don't know, but he'll be in here about, a couple hours. He comes in every afternoon. Let's ask him. It was a simple problem that they screwed up on. But because of that, we have death. Correct? It wasn't God's idea. Are we created to live? Yeah. Have you ever watched somebody? That will to live is deep down inside of us, and it's God-given. But we're going to have to go through it. And maybe we want it to be as calm and as peaceful as possible. Yeah, I get that. But it might not be. We don't know, right? Yeah, it wasn't calm and peaceful for Jesus. And I've certainly been around people it wasn't calm and peaceful for. They're fighting with their every last breath. And others, it's like, oh, okay. And it's calm, and it's pretty straightforward, and it's okay. Why is one that way and why is not the other way? The fancy German word is ich weiß nicht. Do you know these German words? It means I have no idea. I just don't know. Ich weiß nicht. She does? At home or what? Do we want every last thing done? No. Well, probably answer is yes, but it already happened. Correct? Every last thing that's important has already been done. Now, does the doctors, the nurses, the hospitals, and I'm not blaming them at all, do they have to do every last thing in order to make sure I'm okay? No, I'm okay. God took care of me. Does that mean we reject medicine? Of course not. They put my arm back together again. I got a T plate in here because my name's Tim. That way when I walk through TSA, they can, Tim, it's right here, you can look at it. Correct? Or they fixed all kinds of things. Or the dentist made this look pretty good. It doesn't look like Arkansas, does it? It's actually pretty good. So we're in favor of all this, but is this the answer? I love TV commercials. You take this pill and it will save your life. And what do you scream at that TV at that point? What did you say, Dan? Rick? We're already saved. Absolutely. On top of that, you aren't saving my life. You may be delaying the hour of my death. But that's about it. Because no pill is going to save me. Now, are pills good things? Yeah, my blood pressure used to be too high. But my blood pressure these days is right on. And it's because I lost so much weight. No, I think it has something to do with the 2 little pills that I'm taking every night. So I'm in favor of it, because my blood pressure right now is 117/80. And it used to be like 140. So are we in favor of this? Sure. But does every last thing have to be done? I'm a big fan, and now I'm going to start doing promotion stuff even more than I am, of what's called a best interest standard. You kept asking me, what did she want done? I really wanted to say, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's the best thing for her right now. Because she couldn't have told you up front what was going to happen if this was going to happen, because she had no idea it was going to happen. And even the physician had no idea what was going to happen. And the surgeon for sure had no idea what was going to happen, or they wouldn't have done any of this stuff. They would have said, nope, this is too risky. We shouldn't do this surgery. You should just stay home. You got cancer in your lung, okay. But you're going to have some more time if you just don't deal with it through surgery. Nobody could see what was going to happen here. The best interest standard is you ask that person to do what is in the best interest of the patient. So I talk to my daughter and say, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future. I don't know what's going on. But I just want you to do whatever is best for me at that moment. Always remembering that this is not my home. So there are 2 sentences there. Do what is best, and remember where my home really is. Now, she trusted me, more or less, to take care of her when she was a child. I trust her now to take care of me when I will not be a child. Well, yeah. Somebody said, where did you grow up? And I'm like, That was never on the that was never on the to-do list, was it? I missed that to-do list to grow up. I don't ever want to do that. I mean, I'm getting older, but I don't want to ever grow up. So I trust her now to do whatever is right. Her and the doctors, and get the best advice you can, and get everybody involved and say, okay, that seems like a good plan, let's go forward. Or, you know, it's enough. God does. God always makes the ultimate decision. Always does he do. So you can have this great plan and say, I'm not going to do this or the other, and you could still live 20 years past that. Do you know the story of Isaac? He has 2 boys, remember? Jacob and Esau. He has his boys come for him, he's going to bless them because he's about to die, he thinks. He lives another 25 years. That's how well he knew what was going on. He just lived another 25 years past that. And that was the whole day they had to fight over Esau's hairy coat and the whole, you remember that story? If you look at that closely, he's still around a lot longer. We don't know what's going to go forward. You can say, do not resuscitate, and God can come in and say, I'll resuscitate. We're going to keep going here. When things are taken away, are you actually killing somebody? No, they're dying. And maybe we're just stopping that process or slowing it down. But maybe we should just be okay. Because what's the worst thing? Is death the worst thing? No. The worst thing is not being connected to Jesus and not wondering what's going to happen after that. That's far worse than death. Because, Lou said earlier, I am convinced that neither, do you know this verse? Life nor death, nor angels nor demons, the present or the future, nor anything else that's all of God's creation will ever be able to separate us from love of Christ, love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. The other thing is, no matter what you do, remember you're forgiven. So when you have a conversation with your daughter, your son, your wife, go ahead and make the decisions, knowing that God is with you and he cares for you. Do what's best for me, but know you're forgiven. If you end up making a mistake, you know, I raised you. I made a few mistakes with you. You're not a mistake, for the record, but I made a few mistakes along the way. If you make a mistake and you think that later, just remember you're totally forgiven. All right, now how do you do this? Way back when in journalism, right? You all take journalism? More or less. I went and helped with a school paper, but I was the guy that put together the puzzles. That was my job, you know. And in the old days, have you heard of this thing? It's called a typewriter. Have you seen this thing? And so you had to type out the puzzles and leave the spaces, and that was my job. But the other people who were doing actual real stories, who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? So who do you have to talk to? Whoever your agent will be. What do you got to talk about? What kinds of treatments? Maybe this whole best interest standard. Just do what's in my best interest. When should you do this? Tomorrow. You can't do it yesterday. That's already gone. Right? Oh, good. Preacher, it's into guilt. It's not the first one. Won't be the last. But you were never Catholic. I have relatives. So, I mean, community, family, we're in this together. When should you do it? I mean, the suggestion often is the day after Thanksgiving. Seriously now. The day after Thanksgiving, the whole family is together. Let's just sit down and talk about this. Or, you know, some other time. But to really sit down and talk about it. And say, you know, I raised you, if it's your kids, and I've taught you all my life that what's most important is Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. I want you to think about that as my life continues to go forward. I may have Alzheimer's. I may not be able to tell you this myself, but I want you to remember that. And when it comes, and if you're okay making decisions over me, just think about that. Do the best you can think about what's in my best interest, but make sure you always remember you're a child of God. Does that make sense? Yeah. Gene.
It's been my experience that when I would go home 1,000 miles away from here to visit my mother, a widow, I would always talk to the pastor, and I would always talk to the ladies that rode with her to church. And one of them told me one time, "Your mother shouldn't be driving." I don't know that because every time we'd go home and go somewhere, I'd drive. And so I didn't realize that's going on, but you find that out if you stay in touch with community. Going back to this example, would it have been appropriate for somebody in the community or in the church to call one of the four brothers and say, "Your mother's going in for surgery, she's going to be under an anesthetic, maybe you should consider being here"? I don't know if that's appropriate for the church or not.
Oh, I think it is. Because what is the church? It's a family, right? So I teach pastoral care, and one of the books in pastoral care is the whole question of confidentiality. We are not in the church under HIPAA laws. Never have been. Now, if you tell me something in confidence, confess a sin, I absolutely cannot tell anybody at all. Right? If they want to put me in prison, I go to prison. I don't care, because I can't deal with it. But you tell me, "Pastor, please pray for my dad," who has the same name as I do, which confuses me, but okay. So please pray for my dad, and it's okay. You can talk about it publicly on Sunday morning. We're going to pray for him. Now, as a group, we're praying for Richard's dad. Is he a member here too? No. But we're still praying for this guy, and we're thinking about him. You might say, I know Richard's dad. Maybe I should go over and visit him. But now you can talk to Rick and get it figured out. The rules of a family are different than the rules of a healthcare system. What is the rule of the family in terms of confidentiality? It stays in the family. We don't air our dirty laundry out on the public streets. But on the other hand, we're here to take care of each other. Correct? So it would have been great if we'd have really understood from her how serious this was. I mean, it didn't add up. You know what I mean? There was something in my gut that says this isn't quite right. But I didn't do anything about it. And I was probably the one who could have done something about it. I didn't know her other three sons. I'd never met them. But I knew people who knew them. And when I look backwards, I wish I had done it. But absolutely. Because in many ways, you might know somebody better than their own family does, as you're saying. And especially as we get more and more spread out from each other, right? That our kids aren't necessarily with us. I see my daughter every day. She works in the same building. I see my grandkids every day. Well, I've been here this week, but every day I see them. Most people are not like that. I see my son every night because he lives down the hall. And I hear weird noises and just all kinds of things. When should you do this? Whenever it works. Maybe there's a day where we just invite people in and we have some crazy preacher from someplace come up and talk about it, and then we go from here and we go walk off and talk about it with our families. I mean, you could do that. Right? My brother in in Waco, did this thing called death panels. Have you ever heard of this thing? Where on a Saturday morning, they had conversations over this specific issue. They had a little program, they sent everybody away in different parts of the church, and they talked about it. Where should you keep these documents? Some people now are putting a DNR, they put a tattoo at some of them, but some of them just wear a wristband. You were talking about it had to be on a wall. Some of them people are now, and this is modern technology stuff, some people take a picture of their documents and carry them on the phone. And then the spouse knows where they're at. Or if you take a picture of it, you can send it to your child or whoever, and they would have it just as easily as you would. Almost every healthcare system now has a way to enter into the healthcare system, right? So if your clinic and your doctor and your hospital are all part of Baylor, White, and Scott, was that not right? Scott and White, okay. If that's all there, then it's all there. But of course, some of us travel regularly, so that's still out there. When it comes to me in my case, or people, we don't necessarily have to have this anywhere. If I'm injured, my wife will, and they say that's my wife, they'll just talk to her right off the bat. If my daughter comes, she might have to prove that this is an okay thing, but on the other hand, they'll probably talk to her right away. If it's somebody else, what would happen if you appointed somebody that was not a family member? My lawyer, my personal lawyer, always believed that was the best idea, because then you could have somebody to blame. And the four boys wouldn't be blaming each other, there'd be somebody else. And it'd be that guy's job to bring everybody together and make sure we're all on the same page and do it well and then go forward. So you could appoint somebody else. So, you know, at this point, Carrie can't appoint her kids, but you may not want to appoint, your folks are still up in Omaha, right? Your dad's in the Cayman Islands? Okay, we won't go down that road at all. But, okay, so they aren't even nearby here, so maybe she's appointing Steve, who's in the... Hey, Marty. She's appointing Steve, who's in the next office over.
There you go.
Who's an amazing guy, and then, okay, but you could do this with somebody else. And maybe there's somebody appointed as the main person, who's a son or daughter, and then there's somebody from the church who's the secondary who can go in immediately and do some conversation if your kids aren't living here. And that's another way of doing this. Absolutely. You want to make sure each agent has a copy of the documents, at least has the copy that says, I'm the guy. You know, I have the right to be here. I get away with all kinds of things, but you know, I'm able to just kind of go in and, that doctor wasn't sure he wanted to talk to me, but he had nobody else to talk to. And so he just wanted to find out about her. And so at that point, we're having a conversation. Why should you do this? We have this thing up here we already talked about. How do you do it? You blame me. So there was some crazy preacher that came from up north, and he said, you should do this, and we're doing it because of this crazy preacher. And I actually wrote this for another group, and it's the same thing. Just blame me. I don't care. It's like when you tell your daughter that some guy is being in trouble, you say, my folks won't let me do this. Just entirely blame me. Now, second thing I gave you, or actually Carrie gave you, is a sheet of paper that comes from the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, which is Principles About the End of Life. I don't think we're going to go through all these, but you can read them. It basically says God's in charge. That's like 1 and 2. 3, it says, in good conscience, you may let nature take its course. 4, you can have pain-killing medication. I hate that phrase. Pain medications that might stop the pain, that might even shorten your life, but the goal is always to deal with the pain. 5, 6, well, 6 is we're all important. 7, suffering's not the worst evil. Sometimes God uses suffering to build up other people, and sometimes he uses it to build us up. When were you closest to God? When the sun came out tomorrow? In our weakness. When things were tough. When you're up all night because your kid's sick. 7, 8. 8 says death is a spiritual thing. And how death works is a tough thing to figure out. 9, it says it again, it's a spiritual event. 10's the important one, it says you're forgiven. 11 and 12 say these are a big issue for our day and age. But this is for you, you can have it. If you want this whole report, it's on the web called Christian Care at Life's End, and you could read the whole thing if you wanted it. You go to, did I put it on there? Yeah, CTCR is the Commission on Theology and Church Relations of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. So you just go to lcms.org, and this whole thing is here. And it's what, 40 pages or something like that. So what are you going to do? My hope is that you'll have a conversation in the near future, whatever that means, but don't put it off till spring. Oh, I don't know. When is spring around here? Friday? Tomorrow? Okay. South Dakota, we don't normally get spring. It just doesn't happen. We go directly from winter into summer. You know, there may be a day. Last year it was snowing all the way through April. And then all of a sudden in the middle of May it got hot. But, you know, just, we lost church one Sunday in April last year. What? Yes. So we don't really have spring. But, you know, don't wait until April whatever, tax day, April 15th. Take some time, think about it, talk to your kids, or talk to whoever you're appointed, and say, I just want to have a conversation. And I'm doing this only because this crazy nut from up north came down, and he thought it was a good idea, so I'm just going to try it just to see what you think. Please.
I may just disagree a little bit with some of what you said. Because primarily, as I guess everybody here knows, our grandson died at 29.
Mm-hmm.
Did not discuss anything with us or what to do, how to do it, or what happened. They woke him up in the morning and he died at 10:10. So there is no difference between younger and older. And if you know, talking to all of us seniors, you have kids, or their kids have kids, it's not too early to put something down to where or what you want done with your life before and or after.
Sure. I actually am fully agreeing with you.
So,
You might have, difference might be, there might be a little more detail if you're older.
well, that's true, perhaps.
Right.
But I tell you,
Well, actually, I'm a big fan of, normally I talk to people who are my age because we'll bring them in because they want to think about their parents. And then hopefully they will talk to their children. And so that we'll get, I mean, how do you get to people? So if I can get people who are in their 40s and 50s to think about it, and the reason they're coming is because they have to deal with their parents. But at that point, my hope is that we'll talk about their children, and everybody over the age of 18 should do this. Because people under 18 are still under their parents' care. That's not an issue yet. But anybody over the age of 18, this should be done. And if you go into the military, they're going to ask you to do it.
yeah, the military is what got me my first.
But I went into the service, just happened to be a different one. Right? Do we still sing that hymn? There's some places that banned it. Onward, Christian soldiers. Do we still sing that one? Yeah, we still got it, right? I just did a different service. Our pension plan's better. But our health care might not be. TRICARE is a pretty good deal. TRICARE? Or are you on Medicare now? And Medicare. And did you just you got into all this deal now, right? Congratulations. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
So we want to make sure your pension goes as long
that keep him
as
going
as
forever.
possible.
Yeah.
Let's keep pumping him full of something. Preservatives. Other questions?
One more thing.
Please.
You made a mention about how you handle your brothers and sisters. Now, when my mom was there, we were taking care of her for a while, then we shipped her around to each. She could accept a new place for about 2 months, and then at the end, after that, she became mom again, and we had to sort of move her.
There you go.
But
are we related?
What I was mentioning, you said just to let them know that the money is there. Every year I sent $1 out as to exactly how much money was left in my mother's account. She passed away. We took $13,000 and it went to each one of the brothers and they didn't have a problem. But I could see the first year I did it, I got into all kind of trouble because my mother had to get much higher care than what my brothers wanted to do. And so she stayed with my sister. And we were paying her more than what we were doing before. Mm-hmm. And the two brothers decided, we're going to straighten this out now. What is this money? And I told them, did I call you and ask you if you wanted to take Mom? Yeah, shut up. Number two, same thing. Absolutely. Did I offer you the chance to take Mom? No, shut up. And I didn't hear a word.
Now, just for the record, I didn't say tell them how much money.
Well, I know you didn't.
I didn't. In most families, it's just good enough to tell them which banks we're at.
Oh, okay, well.
So
okay.
that if something that happened to any one of us, we would be able to figure this out in terms of how to get after it.
Okay.
And in fact, Dad has a new lawyer now, and so I know who the lawyer is. I'm the executor, so I have to deal with him. But just the simple fact of when you do taxes at the end of the year, to just simply say, these are where the stuff is. And in my case, and maybe many cases, I got some money with Thrivent. You all know Thrivent, right? I got some money with our church body because I'm an employee there. I got some money in other places. Don't have much, but I have a little bit here and there. And so it would be good. I've never done it yet, but I should start doing it. My dad does it now.
Only the money that you have, but how many credit cards do you have, and how many what are they, where are they, who are they with, makes a big deal.
They're in my pocket, so.
But I mean,
yeah, no, it would be great. Just some basic financial information. Adam? Wait.
Anything with beneficiary listings is pretty straightforward, but from family experience, regular bank accounts and getting money released from regular bank accounts is getting more and more tricky. Because if your name is not on the account, some banks will not let even children mess with the account. So I know with my parents, my sister is now signed on as a person on their account, so that should anything happen, and now it's come to the point where she has to pay all the bills anyway because they don't have the capacity to do it. But yeah,
so my little brother is on one account that has enough money in it to take care of anything that needed to be done immediately. So yeah, and I think as Dad and Velma age, I don't call her Mom because she's not my mom, but Dad's wife age, I think that'll become more and more that Peter will be on these accounts. And that's just simpler than, yeah. Yeah, please.
We're finding out that you have problems with the IRS. My sister would fill out her form, my mother would sign it, and they'd send it in. She got to the point where her mind was going, and she refused to sign. So my sister signed it, and she put down the fact that she's the executor and that she's the caregiver, and she's got the power of health and finance and everything else. They contacted my sister and told her that she was illegal to do this. And they got to the point where they were going to put her in jail. Finally, she called them up and she said, let me explain something to you. You can put my 95-year-old mother in jail and you have my blessing, but I'm going to call the TV station first before you roll her off. The IRS got off her back. But there is a problem now with the IRS filling their final, and she has to fill out, my mother died this last year, she has to fill out that final form.
Right. And that's
So,
why, you know, we
if
all
they-
make jokes about lawyers. But you absolutely have to have somebody guide you through this whole process. I know. And even then,
Any
even
of
then the
that
IRS can be a
advice-
problem, but not right now since we're shut down.
They took our money, they took our money.
Well, I paid them too this week. I asked that question. You know, do I have to pay taxes this week because they're shut down? And I think the answer
They
is,
cashed my check, so I know they did.
yeah. No, I sent mine by way of Canada, so it's going to take a while to get it there. All right. Yeah, one more, please.
Texas, Lord love them. But if your son or daughter goes and gets a job, and they have a life insurance policy, and if they don't put a beneficiary down, good luck.
Yeah, you better do that.
And
Yeah, so we have 80 employees at our church. 20 are full-time. Some of them are very young. They're just their first job. They get this beneficiary form. They have no idea what to do with it. I say, fill it out. At least put your folks on there, you know, so that that part gets straightened. You better do it.
careful, because when it goes to the natural parents, no matter what or how long you took care of them,
Well,
unless they put a beneficiary
yeah,
down.
if a beneficiary's on there, it goes there first. Okay, we kind of,
I'm through.
I think it's one more.
One more thing, if you don't mind. Oh. Getting old. Which is part of the reason I was here for the class. I just wanted to say it's been my pleasure and my privilege to have participated in the class this week, along with several other members of our congregation here. And it was more than bioethics for sure. It was a really great experience on several levels, and I won't go into that right now. But I learned not long ago that you can pick your friends by default or by design. And by design, I made several new friends this week, which is really great, and learned a lot from all of them. I want to thank Pastor Kerry for arranging for you guys to be here.
Amen.
Pastor Tim
No,
for
no,
leading.
let's start
And
there.
if you're one of those pastors, please stand up. Please stand up. If you're one of those pastors that was here, come on, stand up. Thank you so much. It's such a blessing. And that's just want to say that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much. Okay, we should call it good, right? It was advertised 8 o'clock, and it's now, if that clock's right, 8:08. And my wife's supposed to land at the airport, I don't know, another hour. She's flying in. We're going to go see my brother and sister-in-law in Waco for a long weekend and fly back to South Dakota. She got a great deal this evening. There was a flight at 5:30, was overbooked. She got $400 to go on the flight at 6:30 that has 5 people on it. 5 people. That's all that is on this plane is 5 people. They sent an extra crew up there because they had a plane in the wrong spot. This would, of course, be Delta. Yeah, no, it wasn't Delta. And so she's flying down this evening, and then we're going to rent a car and go wandering for about 4 days. And so, yeah, we're all wanting to get done. It's been a long day. Are you closing the prayer? What? Oh, so I'm doing it. Look at Pastor Kerry and I go back a long time. Can't be that long because you're, what, 25? Is that what we figured? Yes. And I'm not. Dear Father in heaven, you are the one who created us. You've saved us. You've given us faith. We are yours now and forevermore. Help us always remember that. Be with our family and friends that they might also know the truth, that they would be with us forever. When we get into complicated situations and when things are tough, you are there and you are our rock and our fortress. Please help us and continue to be with us. Be with those who are getting closer to the end of their life, whether they know it or not. Help them to think about it and look forward to being with you, to lift up their heads. Be with us and all who are traveling this evening, and keep them safe from harm. Be with those who are going to have medical procedures tomorrow, with those who are struggling with cancer, with those who are going through all kinds of things. You are a rock and a fortress. You're a protector. Keep them in your care. All these things we've asked for, Lord, plus everything else, we ask in the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus. Amen. You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.